Okay, today we are interviewing Jack Robinson. Today's date is May 19th, 2022. The interview in which you are about to participate is part of the Wood County Historical Commission's project to record the history of the common schools of Wood County, Texas. The content of this interview will focus on your experience at the Coke, Lloyd Common School District number 17. What year were you born?
1939.
What are your parents' names?
Ralph and Laura Robinson.
And what was your father's occupation?
He was a cattle rancher in the cattle business.
What schools did you attend in Wood County?
I attended here at Coke, and then I went to Equipment High School.
What was the highest grade that was taught at Coke?
Eighth grade.
And the school's name came from the family that donated the land?
Well, the original school, the old school before this one, was named after the people who donated the property. My dad donated the property for this school when it was built.
Do you remember what year it was built?
I believe it was built about 1945.
How old were you when you started school?
I was 6.
Do you remember what year?
Yes, sir, 1945.
How did you get to school?
I walked.
And how far did you walk?
Oh, it was probably a quarter of a mile and maybe a little further. Between a quarter and a half a mile.
Did you walk down a road or was it a path through a pasture?
Well, my home was just east of here, a couple of 100 yards. So I just walked down to this road and down to the school on the hill.
Was the road paved or was it dirt?
It was oil. It was an oil road. Well, it was gravel to start with.
Did your siblings go with you?
At times. I had a brother who was in school here also.
Did you have friends that walked with you?
Yes, we did.
What did you do if it were raining?
Well, my parents would carry me in the car.
Did the school have a lunchroom?
Yes, a school had a lunchroom. Yes, it did.
And an auditorium?
Yes, it did.
Was the school ever damaged by the weather or by fire?
I don't believe it ever was to any extent.
Do you remember about what time school started in the morning?
Yes, sir. We started at 8 o'clock. We were out at 3:30.
Did you ever have to miss school to work at home or in the field?
Very seldom did I have to do that. Some of the kids did, but I was fortunate enough not to have to do that.
Do you remember some of your teachers?
Oh, very much so. Corrine and Bill Pittman were my teachers here at Coke.
And what grades did they teach?
Well, Mrs. Pittman, Corrine taught the 1st through the 4th, and Bill Pittman taught the 5th through the 8th.
Did you ever pull any tricks on your teachers?
Oh, we tried, but we knew better. Oh, we would maybe try to hide some of his school pencils or some of his paddles or something like that.
Do you have any funny or interesting stories about your teachers?
Well, I can't say that there'd be funny stories. Ms. Pittman, I thought, was pretty laid back, and Mr. Pittman was different. He was a little bit, until you really got to know him, he was a little more stern. But he put the fear in most of his students. They didn't want to act up.
What were some of the supplies that you had to bring to school?
Well, we brought, to start with, in the old school, we brought our pencils and paper. But then after the oil boom hit here in 1945, when we moved to this school, papers and pencils and free lunches were provided.
So you started at the old school building.
I started the old school building, and in 1947, when this one was finished, then we walked down here in the spring of the year. I'll never forget it. Every one of us got our books and we walked from that school down to this one. And shortly after that, we had, of course, they had struck oil, and the school district had enough money. They bought a school bus, so I didn't have to walk after that.
With your friends?
Well, yes, most of them were played on the softball field out here. We enjoyed. Mr. Pittman was a great athlete, and he taught us a lot of how to play softball. We enjoyed that. Then once I got a little bit older, and we got a school bus, we would go to the Grand Saline salt mine. I'll never forget that. I got to tour the Grand Saline salt mine, and we always went to the state fair in Dallas on the school bus. They had Common School District Day at the state fair, so we got to go.
Where was the playground?
The playground was on the east side of the school here. We had a nice softball field, a lighted field.
Did the school have a swing set or merry-go-round?
Oh yes,
or
yes we did,
seesaw?
we did. And they were back on the west side.
What did you do at recess?
Well, when I was younger, we'd get on the swings and the slides and play. And as I got older and learned to play softball, then I would be at the softball field. And a lot of times we'd talk Mr. Pittman into letting us stay an extra 30 minutes after lunch and play a game. So we certainly enjoyed that. And then we had, later we had games with the other school districts in this county.
So what sports teams did your school have?
We had softball is the only thing that we played.
Not basketball?
Well, yes, we did. We had basketball here on the south side. We had an old dirt court.
So did you play on the softball team?
I did.
Do you remember what schools you competed against?
We competed against Pleasant Grove, Lone Grove, and Cana.
How was your school heated?
How was it heated?
Yes, sir.
With a large gas stove.
What about cooling?
Cooling, we had nothing but raise a window, and every once in a while somebody would bring in a big fan. But most of the time it was just, we'd raise the windows.
If you got hurt at recess or skinned your knee or elbow, who treated that?
Mrs. Pittman mostly did that. Mr. Pittman helped her.
Do you remember any of the rules that you had to follow at school?
Well, you stayed in your seat until you raised your hand to get permission to get up and to move around. And when we started to lunch, we'd line up one behind the other and go to the lunchroom.
What was discipline like?
Discipline was, we had very, very little problem with discipline. Everybody respected the two people who were teaching, the Pittmans, and we had very little problem with the discipline.
What was your favorite subject?
Oh, I think math would probably have been my favorite. English was right close.
And why do you say math?
Well, I'm a livestock auctioneer, so I've dealt with figures all my life. So I enjoyed math.
Did you ever bring lunch?
Oh yes, yes.
And how did you bring it? Did you bring it in a sack or?
Either a paper sack or sometimes I had a lunch box that I could carry. But after we got free lunches, there was no reason for that.
Right. Did the school have any programs or parties at Christmas?
Oh yes, yes. Miss Pittman would direct all kinds of activities, and we had a group of here called the Coquettes, Coquettes, and I was the band leader. We had a rhythm band, and the Coquettes performed. It was quite. A lot of people came from around to watch us perform.
And what did the Coquettes do?
We had a band, and the girls would do some maneuvers, some dances, all dressed alike in costume.
How did you celebrate the end of the school year?
Just with graduation, and we'd usually have a play of some kind. We did readings, all that kind of thing.
Did the parents participate?
At times they did.
Was there a PTA?
There was.
Did you have a stew at the end of the year?
We had a stew. Yes, we did. A big one. Surely did. We were fortunate enough here to have Amarada Oil Company who drill most of the wells, and they would send a lot of their help down here to cook the stew. So we were very fortunate.
Did you have any programs at other holidays?
We would have one usually at Thanksgiving.
Did your teachers give out any awards at the end of the school year?
They would. You were recognized for perfect attendance and for your grades.
Do you remember your daily routine, like the order of things that you did during the day?
Well, when we got here, in the mornings we would have start off with your math, and then your English. We'd have a little recess period of about 15 minutes, and then after lunch was spelling, reading, and history.
Did you have an afternoon recess?
We did have about a 15-minute afternoon recess.
And what school did you attend after?
I went to Quitman High School. You know, we were at a place here where we could choose to go to Winsboro or Quitman because the buses were real close, and we could go to either one. And I chose Quitman.
So how did you get to Quitman?
I rode on a school bus.
In what year did you graduate from Quitman?
1957.
Is there anything you would like to add, or what would you like for people to remember about the Koch School and the people who went to school here?
Well, I think the main thing, I'll always remember the teachers that I had, and they had a great deal of influence on my life. Mr. Pittman was not only my 4th through the 8th grade teacher, but he was also my Sunday school teacher on Sunday. So I had a great deal of respect for he and Miss Pittman and for what they taught us. This school kids were a very close-knit group, and they kept it that way.
And what church would that have been?
That would have been the Methodist Church. At that time, the Methodist and Baptist one of them would have church one Sunday and one would have church the next, but the Sunday school were all together.
And where was that?
That was up on the hill by the old school here south, on the south side.
Is that church still there?
That church has been vacated.
Is the building
It's
still
the
there?
building is there. The Methodist church is
And
built.
what's the name of it?
It was Koch Methodist Church. That property has been sold by the Methodist Church, and it's no longer a church.
Is there anything else you would like to add or say?
Well, I probably could spend a good while talking about my days here at Coke. They were great. My class was the largest class that ever went through Quitman. We had 7 in our graduating class, so that was big. There were about 32 to 35 students here that went to school at Coke, but ours was the biggest class that went through. And when we graduated, it was quite an occasion because we never had that many graduate.
So did you have a graduation in the auditorium?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.